Welcome to another edition of the Inspired Stories podcast, where leaders share their experiences so we can learn from their successes and be inspired by how they've overcome adversity. My name is Anthony Codispoti, and today's guest is Hunter Sebresos, CEO of BaconWork, Inc., based in Provo, Utah. They have developed a groundbreaking gig work app that connects businesses with local workers through shared ratings, reviews, and performance metrics. Under Hunter's leadership, the platform has been featured in Forbes and KSL News, gaining recognition for its innovative approach to on-demand staffing. He previously served as Senior Vice President of Product at Cambio and founded Concept Hunter Design, drawing on a strong background in design and product development. Hunter also spent time at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, focusing on public exhibition design. With a passion for empowering people to find flexible opportunities, he believes in creating a fair and transparent gig economy that benefits both employers and workers. By eliminating rigid staffing contracts, Bacon offers a simpler way for companies to post shifts and for workers to build their own schedules. Now, before we get into all that good stuff, today's episode is brought to you by my company, Add Back Benefits Agency, where we offer very specific and unique employee benefits that are both great for your team and fiscally optimized for your bottom line. One recent client was able to add over $900 per employee per year in extra cash flow by implementing one of our innovative programs. Results vary for each company, and some organizations may not be eligible. To find out if your company qualifies, contact us today at addbackbenefits.com. All right, back to our guest today, CEO and founder of BaconWork, Hunter Sebresos. Thanks for making the time to share your story today.
Thanks for having me, Anthony. It's great to be here.
Now, one thing we didn't mention in the intro, and I want to stop and thank you for, is your service. 8 years in the Marine Corps.
That's right. Yeah, and this is the 250th anniversary of the Marine Corps, actually. It's a special year. I've decided to sort of honor that by running my first marathon, and the marathon I've picked is the Marine Corps Marathon out in Virginia. So I've been training for that, getting ready for it. Obviously, in my military career, I did a lot of running, but I've never done as much running as I've been doing to prepare for this race. But that's been a lot of fun, really enlivening, and a good way for me to, remember and honor that service of that wonderful institution.
Oh, that's really cool. What's the farthest that you've run so far in your training?
10 miles. I did that last Saturday. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
and do you have a target time that you're shooting for, or just hitting the finish line is the goal?
My goal is to be able to run the marathon in a way that makes me not want to hate doing it and never want to do it again. So I want to be able to, I'm running very slow. It's all about endurance. It's all about just enjoying the experience. I run this great, beautiful nature path for my runs, and I love doing that because it makes it kind of a serene thing, actually. Good chance to kind of ponder things and, also grit it out, but also, feel like I'm getting, some restoration from it as well. So
when you pace yourself, it's not all punishment.
That's right. That's the funny thing about it is in the military, I was always having to go push myself. And I've learned just how much pacing at a nice, easy pace can make it much more enjoyable.
So as you think about your time in the Marine Corps, and you were a sergeant there, what aspects of that experience do you think have directly influenced the culture that you're building at BaconWork?
Well, I mean, before that, it directly influenced me as a person. I grew up in a single parent family, was looking for guidance and direction as I got through those teenage years, and I ran into some struggles here and there and thought I could use this experience. So I went into it, not maybe for this. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there for these reasons, but for me, it was I need to build myself. And so I learned, things like discipline. I tried to get as much leadership opportunity out of it as I could. I also learned that there are some difficult things about being in the military and the institutional portion and things like that. All of that then fed into sort of the culture and other experiences that I've had. I've led it into the culture that I've tried to build here at Bacon. One of the key things that I remember in the Marine Corps was they would always say improvise, adapt, and overcome whenever we came to an obstacle. Whenever we, were in the obstacle course and came up to a wall and we had to get our whole group over it or whatever, they'd use that improvise, adapt, and overcome Marines. That's really stuck with me. I feel like one of my kind of superpowers is creativity and ingenuity. That when we run into a challenge, I don't back down. In fact, it gets me fired up. And like, it's how do we get around this? How do we overcome it? And how can we find a way through this challenge? And I think that that's part of our culture as this company as well.
Yeah, you mentioned creativity, and I'm looking at a very creative work background and very
Sure.
diverse. You've got Crispin Porter, a top creative agency,
Hmm.
NASA,
Yep.
Marines, and a number of other creative roles. Were you kind of just trying on a bunch of different hats to kind of see what fits? Like what was sort of the long term thinking there?
My belief has been to make the best of whatever situation you're in, take advantage of whatever opportunity you have. And as you nourish opportunities, more come. And then let sort of life guide you, God guide you, whatever it is your belief is, like let the steps come as they come. And that's what I've done. I never thought of entrepreneurship when I was young as a path for me, but it ended up becoming a path for me after I went through some of these experiences and just saw the various ways that business was run, both creatively and maybe more administratively in certain settings. And I started to think to myself, maybe I could help create something that could create a great organization and, you know, do it myself. And, eventually had some opportunities to do so a couple of times before and then built this one. And I think all those experiences have been stepping stones for that growth that I've had to help learn how to do entrepreneurship the right way.
I'm getting the sense very early in our conversation here that you are a person that you're obviously driven. You've got big ideas, but more of a rather than like a hard charge, like grind it out. It's more of a I'm going to kind of flow with the river, and as I'm going down the river, I'm going to see where the opportunities are and kind of float towards them. Does this sound like I'm painting an accurate picture?
I think you are. I mean, I think that that's probably my macro approach, is letting things, sniffing out opportunities as they come and taking advantage of those. And I would say that once I see something, though, I like to kind of hard charge toward it, take advantage of it, and go as quickly to a result as possible. I think that that's kind of evident in the founding of this business. We went from, I think it was 4 months before we had our first revenue. And I remember our initial investors came back, and when I told them I had some revenue in the door, their jaws dropped. Like, 4 months? What are you doing? Um, Not that they were upset, but that they were surprised. Like, how did you get there so fast? And
Because they thought you were going to be working on sort of the tech
yeah,
platform for quite a while.
right, that's right. And I believe, first off, the approach is I believe all tech is built best first manually. So you build it manually first. You learn, what are the pain points and things that you have, and then you build solutions for that. And that's why we had some manual revenue that came in from just manual shifts that we were running. And then shortly after that, launched the platform and ran shifts through that as well for the Utah Valley Convention Center. That was our first client, still a client today. And then that was our start. And I like to get started fast once we see the opportunity and that it has some viable, legs for growth.
How is it that somebody with your background, Hunter, came up with the idea to start this platform? I don't, as I'm sort of scanning through your LinkedIn profile here, I don't see a
Sure.
background in sort of the staffing space.
Right. Well, I sometimes there's two types of entrepreneurs, right? There's those that are experts in that space and they know what the problems are and all the, flaws with the vendors in the industry and they build a solution. And then there's those that are the outsiders that come in and try something new, and that new approach is what gives them an edge. And I'm definitely that as it pertains to the staffing space. But I will say this, the founding of this company started long ago when I was a kid. And as I mentioned, my mom was raising 5 kids, going to school in the evenings, trying to work a full-time job in the daytime. And what I observed from that was that she needed flexibility. She actually went through this situation where she kind of worked herself into exhaustion. As a young kid, I was worried about her. I remember being called into the school office and said, "Hey, your mom's in the hospital." And, I thought, oh, like, what's going to happen? Flexibility is critical for someone in that type of situation. And so that kind of stuck with me. And then later on, had a conversation with her after she had raised us all, and we all went to college, and she had retired, and she was saying, I've been busy my whole life. I'd like to stay busy, but I don't want to have a full-time job now. I just want to work sometimes. But at that time, I was working with a company as a product leader for companies like the ones we serve now, and they were all mentioning how difficult it was to find good talent. And I thought, any one of these companies would take my mom for a day or two, and she's experienced, she's educated, she has,
But how would
knows
they
how
ever
to get
find her, and how would she
exactly. But
find
how would
them?
they ever find someone like that? And I just thought, let's create a marketplace that would allow someone like that to find a job for as short as a single shift. That's what Bacon's all about, is ultimate flexibility of work. And that's both sides. Hey, I want to bring this person in for a day. I don't want to have to go through long onboarding. I just need to get some stuff done. And that's how we first started off. And
Interesting.
so,
And so, were there
yeah,
any members of your founding team, or sort of like the first couple of employees, that had a background in staffing, or you guys were coming at this completely as outsiders?
the closest thing I would say is the company we were working for before was a tech company, and it was doing employee engagement software. And so we were familiar with some of the, HR related challenges that I would say, but we were obviously not providing any staffing. So staffing directly, no. Working with people as the primary, service that we were providing, we were familiar with that. So we had a little bit of experience with that, but we were pretty much outsiders. And that's calls back that improvise, adapt, and overcome type thing. You just got to find a creative way to solve that problem when there's a market to solve.
And so, tell us how you got that very first customer, the Utah Valley Convention Center.
Yeah, they're a great customer. Turned out that one of their directors actually just lives in my neighborhood, and I didn't know until years later. And so that was a fun thing to find out later on. One of the members of our team was going out to clients and visiting them and showing them the platform that we had built to that point, and trying to get an idea if this is something they would be interested in using. And the person said, not only am I interested, but I think I'd like to use it for an upcoming event. And we only had it in beta at that time, so it wasn't live. And what I
And you
thought was
didn't
that,
have any workers, employees like
well,
signed up yet,
actually,
or you did?
we did.
Okay.
I did a little bit of growth hack stuff in the beginning. We actually had 6,000 people on the platform before we were launched.
Oh,
Who
how
were
did that happen?
Yeah, I mean, we did a variety of, social media, email to friends and family, and then please pass this on. We did actually a little bit of paid advertising through some, some more low end cost type opportunities. I mean, we did everything. I don't know if I would promote this as a thing to do, but when you're out there and a beginning entrepreneur, you just got to hustle. So this same employee, his name's Matt, one of our founding team members, um, we wanted to go to a career fair where people going in to try to find work, but we didn't want to pay for the booth. So we just put a bunch of flyers on the cars in the parking lot and saw if anyone, picked up a flyer. And we obviously knew there was a target audience there. And then by the time he even got back to the office, someone had responded, signed it up, and said, "Hey, yeah, when are you guys going to have things posted?" And we said, "We're in the pre-launch phase. We expect to have things, some opportunities in the next month or so." And by that period of time, all that work, we had built up 6,000 workers.
And so, by the time
So
you're having the conversation with the convention center, and they're saying, "Yeah, we're interested." You had a stable of folks that, and they were all local. That growth
They're all
hack was that.
local. Yeah, it was all just
Okay.
local, all pushing it local and trying to build it local. And a lot of people say chicken or the egg when it comes to a two-sided marketplace. I actually don't think that's the way to think about it. And maybe it is actually, I think, more a way to think about it when you get your marketplace built in the future and you have to start gauging between hundreds of thousands of supply and maybe tens of thousands of demand, and you got larger volume of units that you have to really start to balance. But I think in the beginning side, what you have to find out is what is the most important side of the marketplace, and usually that's the paying side of the marketplace.
Hmm.
And so you find out what that piece is, and you find out what they want and what they're willing to do, and how much they're going to pay, and what is sort of a expectation that that side might have, and you go and get it. And I think people think of two-sided marketplaces in software as this mysterious, you know not the same thing as a SaaS company or something like that. And I'm like, every business is a marketplace of some type, actually. If you think about it, we got to figure out how many shoes to put on the shelf in the shoe store. And you got to figure out that by gauging your demand. And you got to figure out, how much food to put on the grocery store. And you got to figure out that by what's the population in the area. So it's all just kind of a math equation. And in the beginning stages, I think it's important to know which variables are the easy ones to get and which ones are the hard ones to get, and which ones are going to be the paying ones and which ones are not going to be the paying ones. They're going to be the ones providing the service. So
And so in
anyway,
your
that's
platform, it's the companies that are paying.
companies
Uh,
paying. They're
okay,
harder to
so
get.
from the time that the convention center said, yes, we're interested, how long was it until you had your first worker showing up at site?
Well, even more fun than that was the day that we went to go do the final setup and the demo to get them on board. Our employee Matt, his wife had a baby that day.
Oh boy.
So he's like, Hunter, can you pick up this meeting? I'm like, certainly I can. Let's go do it. I went to the meeting, walked in, and she's like, I'm ready to post. Just show me how to do it. And that was for an event that weekend. I think it was Wednesday or something. And so it was Wednesday to Friday or something like that. And I think the post initially was for like 10 people. And for that first shift, to be honest, it was 50% of it was like members of our friends and family, or members, people from us, our team. But as the week
That signed up for
progressed,
this shift just so that you could fill
just
the
so we could
space and
fulfill the
show them that it
space.
worked. And
Yes. And the
okay.
other five, though, were others that were part of that initial 6,000. But by the end of the however many days they had run, majority of it was people from the pre-signups. So, um, that's how you get something off the ground. It's like when you're trying to start a fire, you got to get the kindling and you got to blow on it. You got to be really gentle. And well, once it gets going, then you just add fuel to it and it keeps growing. So
Was there a part of you that was shocked that it actually worked? I mean, you're building this to do this thing, but there has to be a part of you that's like on the edge of your seat, like holding your breath.
sure,
Like, is anybody
sure.
actually going to like commit and sign up?
Um, I don't know if I was shocked as much as I was like, okay, now we got work to do.
Okay.
Because something now that the pipes are fit together and the water's running through it, now we got work to do. Okay, so because we had people that signed up before, and we had run some manual shifts before, so we knew kind of the right steps to get a job staffed, right? We did it all with spreadsheets and things initially, phone calls. So we knew it would work. We just didn't know if it should work through our platform. And then once it worked through our platform, well, there's a kind of funny learning. This is maybe a lesson for those that are doing lean startup type stuff. But we launched it, and it was originally sort of like an Uber approach, where it's like one driver and essentially one rider, right? Like one person to work a single shift. So this first user went in, and she needed 10 people over 3 days, so 30 people, 30 total shifts, and she went and made each one of those one at a time. 30, 30 shifts, do the same process 30 times. And I told that to my engineer. She went and did that 30 times. And he sat right there in our he didn't even leave the conference room. And he rebuilt it so that she could mass post right then and there, first day, right? So anyway,
That's
the,
adapting very quick on the fly. I love
yes,
it.
exactly. Yep, right. That was fun. I think the more fun that was when I had got out of that, when I finished that meeting, um, I realized we had not launched the public site. It was still in beta.
Okay.
And so I called up our engineer at that time and I was like, turn it on, like push it, push it live. She's
We
walking
need
back
it
to her
now.
office right now. And he, you know, that was kind of a fun moment for us to kind of chuckle about afterward. And, he got it there, launched it right away. And she went back and didn't know any different, just started posting.
So how does it work on the employee side? Do they have to verify their identity somehow when they sign up?
Yeah. Yeah. So there's, a lot of the standard things that staffing agencies do. We have a background check that they go through. There's, some, I-9 type stuff that we do. There's different things like that, depending on what service we're providing. On the W-2 side, obviously, there's a lot more. On
Okay,
the
so that was going to
1099
be my
side, a lot
question.
less.
Are these 1099 or W-2s or like a mix? How's this
Yeah,
work?
yeah. So we have two services. One is the 1099 side, which is it was a lot more gig economy, just open marketplace style. And then the W-2 side of our operation is much more of that standard staffing model. And yeah, those workers belong to our company and then are obviously subbed out to the companies that use them in the standard staffing model. We have both options.
And so what kinds of jobs are you actually filling? And do they tend to be different if they're sort of 1099 gig style versus W-2?
Yeah. Um, we primarily work with the light industrial space, so warehouses, fulfillment, third-party fulfillment centers, any private label company that does its own warehouse and fulfillment in the back. Those are our bread and butter. We know how to do those exceptionally well, and have a lot of long standing clients that have used us. That some of them have switched primarily to our platform, and then we also work with the hospitality side, so events and catering. And those, of course, are more like, hey, I need 100 people this weekend, and then I'll talk to you in a couple weeks for my next event. So it's a little bit different style where you got the warehouse that's every day I need a minimum of X, and I might ramp up during my busy season versus single event style thing.
And so is it your client that is choosing whether they want to go the 1099 or the W-2 route, or how is that
Yeah.
determined?
Well, certainly in certain environments, there's no 1099 option available with regulatory type environments that we have. There's a lot that's going on there, I think, in our economy and our different different governments and the states that we work in. And some are more supportive of sort of, I would say, the Uber model, and some are less supportive of it. Um, we actually think that there's some benefits to both, as I've kind of mentioned before. We we believe that both are great tools. They are, as I mentioned, there's sort of like a hammer or a screwdriver. Both can fasten things together. They're used for different reasons. And what I think companies that choose to go more of a 1099 approach are those that have maybe less of a regular posting, less of the same standard people that are going to be coming back. It's really like, hey, I need 50 people, and I kind of don't care exactly who those people are. I just need them to show up, and I need them to do this job. I need them to help me with this, and we'll be done. Some are much more maybe cost conscious. Think of mom and pop shops that are just trying to get someone in, one or two people, try them out for a little while. If they like them, maybe they'll bring them on full time. So those are other 1099 approaches that people might use. And it has a lot to do with, you know, how does the worker want to handle the situation? Do they want something that's a lot more stable? Do they want to feel like they are part of this organization? Um, or do they want to have complete free reign over where and when they want to work, which, is the essence of a contractor, I think. They get to choose when and where they want to work and for what price they want to pick, and they don't have to have the tools or whatever. They can kind of do that themselves. And that's what the other 1099 approach does provide.
And you're saying there are some geographies that are less accepting of sort of the 1099, the gig economy approach. Are there other types of government or regulatory, I don't know if you're going to call them hurdles or situations that you and your clients have to navigate?
Yeah, I mean, and there's also environments that are more favorable, like Tennessee and Georgia have been more favorable to the gig economy. They find that is a big boom to their economy for people being able to, find work and stay out of unemployment. Like I once had a conversation with, some of the people here in Utah, including the governor, and said, I know that we're concerned with unemployment. I can tell you, I can get someone to have money in their pocket faster than they can get through the unemployment application. So, I know it's not a long-term solution. There's maybe not benefits for some of these guys, but they also just need money to feed their families. So that's where I'm saying there's a great tool there. Sometimes it's the stepping stone for them to find the next thing that would get them those benefits and things like that. And if that's what they need, then I say, well, we will get you in however many doors and let you prove yourself, and that will help you find a job with those things. The worst part is if they're just at home, they're not getting any answers back. They're filling out applications, they're feeling down on themselves. And I really care about the confidence that people have from being able to bring income to provide some support for themselves and their families. That matters to me. And that's why I think to say that the 1099 option is bad or try to regulate against it is a little bit of a miss, because it is an option to get someone out of that situation and then build the next step and build the next step and build the next step. And
You're saying get them
I
off the couch, get them working,
get
a
them
contributing
working.
member of society, which is what they
Yeah,
ultimately are seeking themselves.
that's
And that builds
correct.
some confidence, that gets them some momentum, gets a little money in their pocket. They can start paying some of their bills. And then, being out in
Hmm.
sort of the workforce, the next opportunity can kind of present itself.
That's right. And not all environments are completely uh, regulatory supportive of that. And the unfortunate part is, I think that they're only looking at the way to make money is to be a full-time employee for a company that provides you benefits. And not everyone is at that point. I watched it with my own eyes as a kid. Like, I saw my mom trying to put stuff together with temp work and go to school. Now, she later on became a great employee and she had a master's degree and all, like, but you got to give people a start sometimes. And I don't think that start has to be money out of the pocket of the government. I think that's start can come from them, figuring it out themselves, getting a start themselves, putting some money in their pocket themselves. And entrepreneurship's not an option. You got to give them another road, and then build on that a step at a time. As I mentioned, opportunity, well nourished, yields more opportunity. That's the key principle of which we follow, is get them moving in the right direction, and
So I've
then
had the
build on
chance
it.
to talk to a number of other, I'll call them more traditional staffing agencies. And a couple of things that I hear from them that's affecting their clients and therefore them as well. And they tend to be in similar industries like light industrial,
Hmm.
quick service, hospitality, is sort of the uncertainty around tariffs,
Yes.
and sort of all of the new regulations and movements around immigration. Are you seeing, does that stuff affect you guys at all? Or are you kind of immune to that because you're set up a little
It
differently?
certainly affects our clients. I will say that. We have some clients that do a lot of importing from overseas. We have some clients that use a lot of, immigrant workers, and they are working a little bit out of fear right now. They're trying to adapt. I think some of them might even be supportive of the overall direction that the administration is going in, but are certainly trying to figure out how to make their business work under these constraints. And so I think, companies that are struggling with, tariffs, struggling with, potential immigration challenges with their worker base, there's ways to solve that. And there's ways to do that the right way and stay clear of that. Um, and that's something that we provide as a company. We are trying to help a lot of our existing clients navigate that and make some adaptations and changes. But I'll say the one thing is this: the the best tool you can have when you have uncertainty is flexibility.
Mm.
Like, as a company, you have to be able to flex, and you got to be able to figure out how to make those moves fast. And if you're not making them, your competition might be making them and getting ahead of you in that area. So being flexible, and our clients that have relied heavily on a base of on-demand flexible staff have been able to do that in some of these uncertain times. Just think about it. Um, Tariffs are at a certain rate one day, and the next day they are different. And so that impacts your margins, and you need to determine how to adapt to that. And if you have a large staff that is full time, you're looking at potential, layoffs as an option, or in the case that it's the opposite way, which are the high times, something goes the opposite way and your business is booming, and now you're looking at a long period of time potentially to try to get people in the door to allow you to take advantage of
It's
that
hard to
boom.
staff up and staff
Oh,
back
it's
down
certainly hard.
when you've got sort of that what's the word I'm looking for? Sort of that consistency in terms of what to expect, right? And with the tariff rates going up and down,
Right.
I've heard lots of companies, they've got orders that they told their factories overseas to just sit in their warehouse,
Just sit
or
there.
to
Right.
stop production,
Right.
or oh, okay, now the tariffs are lower, like ship
Now
everything as
wrap
quickly
it.
as you can.
Yeah,
Now nobody can
exactly.
find a container to send over. Yeah, it
Right.
has a cascading
Exactly.
effect.
Exactly. And so you've got to be able to be nimble, and you got to be fast. And unfortunately, when uncertainty settles in, oftentimes what the human instinct to do is nothing. Like, just wait. I don't know, let's just wait. Um, and I certainly don't recommend the opposite, which is like run down a path and expect that that's what it's going to be all the time, and set the ship in a certain direction and let it roll at full speed. That's not the way to go. But just like when you're going through an obstacle course, you have to move nimbly through it in order to get it done. And you got to take every obstacle for what it is and figure out how to get over it. And sitting there and waiting for potentially the obstacle to move is probably not the best strategy.
Hunter, you mentioned that you guys are able to kind of help your clients navigate some of these uncertainties around tariffs and immigration. What does that look like? What are you guys able to offer them from a practical standpoint?
Well, like you mentioned, when shipping goes down low or increases rapidly, our ability to staff up and staff down is, I think, the fastest solution out there, even faster than a traditional temp agency model, because of the marketplace effect. Because you don't have access to a temp agency's maybe 200-person roster or 500-person. You have access to hundreds of thousands of people and tens of thousands that might be downloading it at any one month, right? And it's fresh. It's always fresh. And so, yeah, one day you're saying, I don't, hold off. We can't have this many people working today because our, shipment's stuck in port. Great. You have a very flexible staff. Those people are not going to never come back they like working for you, just keep them on your favorites list, keep in your group, and just tell them, we're not needed today. And guess what? They'll go find work on a different place on our marketplace. That's the advantage to them. You're not leaving them without an opportunity because you've let them go or something along those lines. And now they got to start over from scratch. There's a full marketplace of opportunity for them to go find the paycheck that they need. And then when the shipment comes back in, guess what? They'll be the first ones to come back. You send out those personal invites through our platform, and the people who've worked for you before are like 90% more likely to work for you. And so again, and once they worked for you about 5 shifts, that person's almost guaranteed. Anytime you invite them, they'll come. They know your system. They know,
That's kind of the
how to get
crossover
started.
point, that 5 shifts.
That's yeah,
Now
exactly.
they're
Yeah,
familiar, they're comfortable, they're going to
that's
come
right.
back.
And
Yeah.
so a lot of times they're like, well, I just want someone here and I want them to be here forever. And it's like, I'm sorry, but the retention days are over. Like the days, maybe for your full-time staff, but for these type of hourly roles, people will switch for as short, small as 50 cents on the dollar more an hour. And so, and for, if their family's sick or if they're moving on to something, they'll switch for any reason. A full-time person inevitably is a turned over person. So the way
Mm.
to think about it is not retention, it's talent flow. Build a roster of individuals that can come in and keep your business moving along with the push of a button. And that's what we allow them to do. And then on the regulatory side, I'll just answer quickly here. We have both options. So if they're like, hey, I'm a little bit more concerned about, making sure we have, e-verified workers and, one thing or another, you have options. We have different staffing options to fit those needs. And so we know a lot about that. And we know a lot about that in almost every state because we are constantly looking at those things.
I was going to ask, what geographies are you guys available in?
Yeah, we have done things, and we have obviously a lot in Utah, Las Vegas and Dallas, Fort Worth area of Texas, some in Houston. We have some things in Miami. We have some things in Virginia. We have, shifts in various states across the
And as you sort
United
of think
States.
about new markets and that chicken egg problem, I'm going to guess it's when you find the paying client who says, hey, can you guys help us here? Then you guys have some system on the back end where you know how to go and find the types of folks that are looking for these opportunities to work there. And you say, okay, now we can sort
Right,
of put you guys together.
right. And one thing to think about is I'll just let you know, like the 1099 model is faster to spin up.
Mhm.
Just like that very first experience with the convention center I told you, like we had a certain amount of people signed up already that were just waiting for when the opportunities came. And when they did come, because it was more gig focused, it wasn't like I'm relying on this as my primary bread and butter income. It's I'm just ready to make some money here and there. So they're waiting, and as soon as that opportunity posts, boom, we can fill it as long as it's at a certain volume. And so if you're looking at like a small client that's doing like 10 to 20 a day, we can do that in almost any market from the ground up in a matter of weeks. We'll be ready to go at a very low cost to
And that
start.
would sort of
And
be like the minimum threshold, like
yeah,
10 shifts per day.
yeah.
Okay.
And I mean, they can start smaller than that, but it's going to take, a little bit longer commitment to know that they're going to regularly have things going
Because you guys
for
have
us to
some
want to.
costs involved in
There's
getting
some
spun up
costs.
in a new market.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
But then once you get to a point where you're doing more volume in a market per month, and you have clients that want to say, hey, I want to really, have the same people back. I want to be able to tell them, a little bit, treat them a little bit more like an employee. Then we'll maybe switch them over to a W-2 model and let them kind of do it that way and say, let's get some regular people in there um, rather than sort of just an
So
open marketplace.
W-2, when you go that model, that tends to be folks that are working there a bit more regularly.
That's
They've got
correct.
sort of
Yeah.
a steady
And they can do that on a
presence.
1099 side, but it's not, there's nothing on our platform that says you have to go anywhere or do anything. It's all choice. accountability and flexibility. On the W-2 side, obviously, it's a little bit more of a commitment and an assignment to go work for a place for a certain amount of time.
What's the biggest resistance you get when talking to potential new customers? What is it that you have to, what's the fear or concern that you have to overcome?
um, I'd say that the biggest one, honestly, is I've worked with a lot of staffing agencies, and my experience has been horrible. And I hate to say that, but and I'm not saying that every one of our shifts is perfect and is going to be rays of sunshine, but we have certain things that regulate that. I'll give you an example. A lot of times, someone picks up someone from a temp agency and they don't like them. They might say, "I don't like that person. I don't want them to have them come back." But do realize that that staffing agency is going to send them somewhere else because they've taken the time to onboard this person. Um, we have a thing that allows us to monitor that and hold people accountable. So all the workers are rated and reviewed, at the end of the shifts by the supervisors.
And
We
those
have a
ratings
thing.
can be seen by other prospective employers.
That's correct. Yeah, just like an Uber driver, like you can see, is this a person of 5 star, and how many reviews do they have? They have 255 stars. That looks great. And then we have a thing called a Bacon score, which takes attendance factors and performance factors, and think of it like a credit score. It kind of puts those together on a scale of 1 to 800. And if they're in that 6 to 800 range, you're looking at a really great person, and they have a history of showing up on time and working the whole duration of the shift. They have a history of getting good star ratings over those shifts. And those would be indicators that this is a person that both knows how to show up, work hard, and work well with others.
What's behind the name, Hunter? Bacon.
Well, I did, as you mentioned, I did work previously in some creative fields, and I was in the advertising and marketing space for a good portion of my career initially. Crispin Porter, as you mentioned, and as I came into this, I was like, I don't want to have the same name. I don't want to be confused with anybody else, people this or gig that. And I just wanted to have something unique. One day, my son, he was 10 at the time, and he had a notepad, and he had changed the name of the notebook from whatever it was. I used a Sharpie, wrote over the top of it, and made it say bacon. And it made me laugh. And I thought, okay, that's good. I want, when they think of us, I don't want them to think of boring staffing. I want them to be thinking of something fun. But I thought of bring home the bacon, which is what we want to help our workers do, and save your bacon, which is what we want to help our companies do when they have a staffing need. And I thought we're going to call it bacon. I can remember the teams when we first told them that we're going to name the company that. None of them believed me, and I said, "No, I'm absolutely serious." And I think they all started to believe that it was a good name when we started to get calls. We would do calls, and they'd say, I'd say, "I'm the CEO of Bacon. I'd love to talk with you." And they'd say, "Wait, what did you say?" Let's
That's what you
talk.
want. That's
Yeah,
what you
exactly.
want. I love
That's
it.
right.
I've started a number of companies and different brands in my past, and I've done some of the sort of the old traditional boring names. And
Sure.
then I've done some of what you're describing, kind of the more like unusual, like fun
Right.
names, and I think that path is so much better for
Oh,
all the
good.
reasons that you just mentioned. I love that. So I want to check myself on a stat I've got here. I see that you recently raised 16.5 million in seed funding from some notable investors like Greyhawk Capital. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean that's over time we've done,
Okay.
and we've done a little bit more than that over time. But yeah, that's about that range that we've raised. And Greyhawk's one of the noteworthy ones. They're a great support to us. Um, we've been able to do some fundraising over the years and get support for our build.
And so, how are you putting those funds to use? Is this mostly in engineering talent? Is there a lot of sort of human customer service that's there?
Yeah, certainly engineering and product. We always want to put some into being successful at that, but a lot of that has been our growth into new markets and growing over the years. and taking those and putting it into marketing dollars and into sales team members to get us out there and help us grow and expand and help expand the business.
What's probably the biggest growth lever that you are able to pull? Is it like you're running? I mean, and I guess I'm thinking about this from two different aspects. Let's talk first about how do you find the clients? Is that
Hmm.
like a lot of cold calling? Are you, I don't know, running LinkedIn ads to
Yeah.
the folks? What's that look like?
So we actually have a pretty strong outside sales team that go out there and meet with warehouse managers and staffing managers, things like that, and I just ask them, "Are you using temp labor? And if so, how's it going?" And usually the answer is, "We are, and it's going okay." And we say, "Well, we got good news. We do solve that staffing problem, but we're not a traditional staffing agency. We're an app, and we do it this way, and maybe you should give it a shot." And that's kind of the approach they take. That's been our primary driver. But in more recent years, as the market has kind of changed and shifted, uh, we actually have a lot of inbound work that comes from word of mouth or from online advertising, that people see the need for staffing. And I think that there's two things there. One, I think that those warehouse managers are younger folks who are used to finding things through their phone. I'll just be honest. They'll click around, and it used to maybe not be that type of person, but now it is more and more a younger person that is trying to find a staffing solution. And they've grown up with social media, Uber and Lyft and DoorDash, and they're looking for something new. Um, and maybe the second reason is we're becoming more popular. There's a lot of services out there, a lot more than when we first started this company, and maybe people know a little about them and they want to try them out. So the inbound has been stronger in more recent years.
Is there any thought about growing through acquisition? Does it make any sense for you guys to consider acquiring, local shops that have a big presence there and kind of putting your tech in place over top of that?
I'm really glad you asked that, because it makes a lot of sense to do that. We've actually looked at some of those opportunities, and this is one of the differences that I think we have found as we have looked at those opportunities. There's been some challenges because some of these people, this is their livelihood, and they're not really interested in getting out of it anytime soon. And so they might be interested in an acquisition, but they might be saying, not right now, maybe in another 5 years, 10 years, something like that, when they're ready to retire. But there's a lot of people retiring right now. Silver tsunami, as they kind of refer to it, industry term, of people that have built great, successful businesses, but have little to no technology implemented, could really benefit from that. And we're interested in meeting with them. But I'll tell you one thing that we learned as we went through and met some of these: the power of the technology is that it helps the core margins improve.
Mm.
Staffing historically is a pretty slim margin business. As much as companies, either like, man, you're charging me a ton to bring these people in, but that's because there's a lot that you have to do. You got to cover all those finding and you know uh, processing and all these types of things in order to get that person to be able to work successfully for you on short notice. But what we have found is that our margins are usually about double per shift what a traditional staffing agency is
How
doing.
is that possible?
Well, we can service more shifts with less people because of our technology. We can get shifts to happen more automatedly. We have a thing in our platform called a backup algorithm, that if someone is about to know, we know kind of the percentages as they play out for no shows. And so we plan for that in advance, and we are going to send backup workers based on that algorithm. And if you don't need them, if we have the situation where everyone shows up and you got to have a backup worker, you can send them away, and we pay them for just showing up. We pay them an amount for being there,
Just being on standby,
just being on
basically.
standby. Yep.
And they could show
Yeah.
up and say, hey, we've got enough folks, you can go home, but here's
Yep.
your fixed payment amount that we agreed to.
That's right. And we do that. Our company does that. So we have that pretty finely tuned after hundreds of thousands of shifts. to know how many are likely to, no show. And by the way, that kind of it's built off of our bacon score. So we can look at the configuration of workers and say, what's the likelihood we're going to need a backup in this situation? So with all that, you don't have to have someone in the recruiting seat calling people every day and determining if they're going to be there and making if someone no shows, how am I going to rapidly fill that? The app just does it automatically. And so we can do things with a lot less cost, and our margin per shift is what we're shooting for. We want to be the best. And so what ends up happening is you can say to a staffing agency, this is how you're currently running it. And if you're running it in much more of a manual way, we might be able to convert that to our way and have you make, double the amount per shift that you work.
So, would you think about just licensing the tech to other staffing firms?
We've thought about it. I think for now we're focused on continuing to do what we're doing and building and growing, but we have thought about that. Um, that's more of like a business model thing. Like, does the business model outpace the business model we currently have? And I think markets shift and change. And we actually have had staffing agencies come to us when they've got sort of an over supply or an over too much demand, too many shifts to fill, and they aren't ready to staff up that fast, and they'll come to us and say, hey, can you guys fill these 10 for us? And we'll just rev share it. And we're happy to do that with staffing agencies.
That's interesting.
We don't feel like we have to compete. We feel like we can compete alongside them. There's plenty of business for everybody.
Hunter, what's a serious challenge that you've overcome, whether it's personal or professional? What did you learn? How'd you get through it?
I'll talk with some professional ones. I'll talk professional ones first. So one of them is that margin game, and it's taken us about 2 years to dial that in and adjust things and figure out how to make the platform do the most and figure out what the right staff is to allow us to grow and scale. And man, that was, it's kind of the boring stuff. It's not I'm starting something up and I'm making t-shirts and, it's the stuff that when you really dig in as a CEO, you have to push the organization and say, we are striving to be the best at this. It takes lots and lots of small changes. And so that's been a really learning, big challenge for us to make that adaptation from just rapid growth as fast as we could to also profitable growth. And so that's been an interesting change. COVID was a different challenge for us. We went from being a primarily hospitality focused business to a much more light industrial. Now we're majority light industrial. And that shift took some courage on our end and some,
So the
just
hospitality industry mostly shut
it was
down.
gone. I mean, it was shut down all
So
the
your
way, no
business
events.
pretty
Yeah.
quickly
I
you
mean,
dropped
in one
down.
day, I remember one day, I can remember at Utah Jazz games, one of our players popped for COVID, and that the whole NBA shut down, and then the very next day, everyone said no events, like just shut them down. And yeah, we had thousands of shifts in the hopper, and they went to essentially zero over 2 days. And so we had to shift quickly. And luckily, we had some warehouses that had just become new clients, and we're liking the shape of that, and decided to ramp that up. And we offered, some
And if those sorry to
promotions.
interrupt, Hunter, if
They're good.
just to kind of paint the picture for folks, if those warehouses are doing e-commerce fulfillment,
Yes,
that's something that went through the roof. Nobody's going to the
absolutely.
stores. Everybody's buying stuff online.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, it went rapid, and they could not adapt fast enough. And everyone's thinking, I'll stay at home. So they were not only getting more demand than they ever had, but they're dealing with a mindset of the average worker, which was, I'm supposed to be at home. And they're saying, well, then people won't have things. So we actually looked at it as a way to help the economy. And we said, hey, you come work with us. We're not even going to charge you fees for the first 60 days. We just want you to get people to work and let those people work so they can put money in their pockets and keep your business moving along. And that earned us, a handful of really great clients coming out of that. And then
It's a
some
bit of a
momentum.
gamble on your part.
a little bit of a gamble, but a bigger gamble was, as I mentioned, sitting there wondering what to do in the midst of COVID.
Oh. What do you
And
consider
then,
to be your superpower, Hunter?
yeah, I a couple of things I would say. That creativity is definitely something I've built on. In the early days, it was advertisements, creative advertisements, maybe design related things, and just being a really creative person through visual expression and fun communication. But then learning to adapt that in a different way, different solutions to solve business challenges or challenges for people in general. That's one of my strengths. And I've really come to appreciate and learn how to take those creative ideas and then turn them into strategy and game plan and something that fits a business model. So I think that that's a real strength. I think the other strength that I have is just being able to really get the best out of people. Um, one of the challenges I do have is I find I do that much better on an individual basis, and so it really usually impacts the people that directly report to me or that I have close, work with, and um, I feel like I'm currently learning how to expand that further in this role. But seeing what moves people, a good sense for that, having done lots of different things and met with lots of different people and worked alongside lots of different people, I think is where that comes from. Even my family culture, my dad was Filipino, my mom was from here in the United States, mixed culture family. Um, it's like any place, any people, any person, I feel like I can get along with you, connect with you, and figure out what's going to get you excited, motivated, and help you build a path toward it. And I really like to do that with the people I work with.
What are some
Just,
strategies that you found that have been helpful in doing that?
I mean, it sounds really basic, but you got to really listen. And you can't just listen with your ears. You got to listen with like your eyes, with your heart. What are they, what does your heart tell you that they are feeling right now? To think that people are just working machines is the wrong way to approach it. And part of my experience in the military, actually, like I was a very thoughtful, contemplative Marine, but also very disciplined and hardworking. Um, and I learned that sometimes barking orders is not the best way to go, right? So you got to earn people's hearts and minds, not just expect them to go in a direction at all times. Because people will do something, if forced to, they'll do it, but they won't do it willingly and with effort and with commitment. And as soon as, something breaks down, they'll just wait for the next order instead of figuring it out themselves and pushing through it and coming back with a result. And ultimately, what I want is a result. I don't just want, compliance. I want a result. And so I'm looking for not just earning their, compliance. I'm looking to earn their hearts when I'm working with them.
Oh, that's powerful. I like that a lot. Anything in terms of daily practices or habits that either help you start your day, Hunter, or kind of keep you centered and on track as you go through it?
Started a new one recently. So on the days when I'm not running, I just make sure to go for a walk to do my planning while I'm walking. I find that my planning while I'm walking is actually more productive than sitting at a desk because sometimes I'll want to open up my phone or open up, check an email or something like that, and I get distracted really quickly. And a walk doesn't allow me to do that. I got to be moving along and I got to be thinking of each one of those roles that I have, whether it's being a father, a member of my church, whether it's being a CEO. Like I'm looking through those roles and saying, what do I need to do? And what is the most critical thing to do that I could say to myself, if I only got that one thing done today, I could check it off and say, I did the right thing today. So that
Do you
to me
like to
is
do
really,
that
really
in
critical.
silence or do you listen to music on your walks?
Um, I've tried both. I think the silence is better for me. You get little thoughts and promptings and stuff. You can go a little deeper. And I imagine for some people that's not the same, but for me, that's what works best.
For me, there usually, not always, but usually has to be some kind of noise.
Right.
So sometimes it's like upbeat music. Sometimes it's slower tempo music, just, sort of what my body needs. And then no affiliation, but Brain.fm has these sort of
Oh, yes.
these what are they called? These tracks. Help me out
Right.
here. The
Yeah, there's like white noise tracks or different like tracks to help you get your mind in a certain mode.
binaural beats, I think,
Yes,
is,
that's it.
yes, what
Binaural
what
beats.
they.
Yep.
And there's something about that man really puts me in the zone.
That's awesome.
So yeah, oftentimes for me the quiet is sort of deafening, but yeah, like you said, sort of to each their own. Everybody has their
Right.
own preference. Hunter, I've just got one more question, but before I ask it, I want to do two things. First, I'm going to invite all listeners to just pause for a second, go ahead and hit the follow button on your favorite podcast app. We've had a really interesting conversation today with Hunter from BaconWork, and I want you to continue to get more great stories like this. Hunter, I also want to let people know the best way to get in touch with you before I ask that last question. What is that?
And then go to baconwork.com if they're interested. That's probably the best way to do it. You can also go to the App Store if you're a worker and you want to find opportunities. Store or Google Play Store, download it there, search Bacon Work, and it'll be one of the first things that pops up. Download it and create your account. Those are ways to do that as well.
You can do it all
And
right through your phone.
all through your phone.
Excellent. So, last question for you, Hunter. You and I reconnect a year from now, and you're celebrating something. What is that thing that you're celebrating 1 year from now?
I would like to see this W-2 side of our business surpass our 1099 side of our business. And what that would mean is we've expanded the into more markets and to larger clients and maybe provided yet another opportunity for people. One thing I didn't mention before too is we actually have a direct hire solution. So they can do temp, they can do W-2, and they can just go direct hire through our platform if they want to do
Oh,
that.
interesting.
So we're trying to provide basically any way for someone to get to work, because when people work, they have confidence. And when people have confidence, it builds more confidence and they get more opportunities to work. And so we've opened up all those doors, and some of them more recent than others. And I'd love to see all of those doors have lots of people passing through them a year from now when we talk again.
From a marketing and operational standpoint, what does it look like to try to really beef up that W-2 side of the business?
We got to get our sales team to learn how to sell it better. We got to learn how to get the marketing dialed in better than we have it now. It's mainly optimization, is what I would say, because we've done these shifts before. We know how to do them, but now we got to build the right marketing and sales channels, go-to-market solution in order to scale it at a more rapid pace. And the same thing goes for our direct hire platform.
Excellent. Well, Hunter Sebresos from BaconWork, I'm going to be the first to thank you for sharing both your time and your story with us today. I really appreciate it.
Anthony, appreciate your time, and I appreciate you having me on the show.
Folks, that's a wrap on another episode of the Inspired Stories podcast. Thanks for learning with us today.